within 7 days following the annual organization meeting of this body. I now ask you to rise for an invocation given by Councilwoman Rasmussen, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd like to welcome all visitors to Metuchen today. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and during this holiday season, I'd like to remind everyone to drive carefully, drive slowly, and be considerate of others.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Katie, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Wallace.
Here.
Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Here.
Councilwoman Insera.
Here.
Councilman Grazel.
Here.
Let the record reflect that Councilman Camerano will be arriving shortly. Council President Muldoon.
Here. Okay, could I have a motion to open the agenda session?
I move that we open the agenda session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any matters for the agenda session? Hearing none, could I have a motion to close that section?
I move we close the agenda session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We now have a report of a salary commission, which I asked some former council people to look at the stipends paid to the borough council. All of you, welcome. I know you have two spokespeople. Would they come up forward and go over your report and your findings? Either where you feel comfortable. If you want to come up, sit, and have the microphones here, that's fine.
What is that?
I don't know.
It's feedback of some sort.
This is D. Simone was just in, did some that microphone over there. I don't know whether he shorted it out or not.
Is this one?
Good?
I think we're good. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for
Turn that one
inviting
off
us
over
tonight. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Turn the one that comes out of the thing off right there. He was just fooling with that. Yeah, that's got a on and off switch.
Causing a commotion.
Whatever you did, you made it stop, so
They took the batteries out of it.
he was just here fooling with it. The problem started after he left.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting us to come tonight to present our report.
I guess it's not that.
Rich.
He'll come up, he hears.
Katie, why don't you,
It's not my son, no.
Put your phone away.
It's off.
I forgot my phone's home anyway. Not mine.
I turned mine off.
It's not mine.
I don't think it was my phone, though.
really?
Mine's at home.
Yeah, everybody, listen, turn your cell phones off.
All right.
I don't have
Every
one.
time someone touches one, it goes off, so.
All right. Let me shut mine off, please.
Mine's off. I don't think it was it. Okay.
Mine's off.
Sorry about that.
Okay. We'll try again. Thank you for inviting us to report tonight on the issue that we reviewed and prepared a written report for you to consider concerning the stipends that are given to the mayor and council and have been since 1974. This commission that was appointed for this purpose included myself, Sherry Rose Rubin, I'm a former councilwoman, Dan Spiegel, Beatrice Moskowitz, Will Waldron, and Stanley Lease. Everyone on this committee has served on the council. Dan and I were graciously appointed as co-chairs of this committee, and we all met several times over the summer to prepare this report for your review. So just as a bit of history concerning the question that was posed to us, the mayor and council are given a stipend each year that they serve on the council, and it is considered not a salary, but rather a stipend to compensate for the costs of serving the borough. The stipend is currently $1,200 for council members for the year and $2,000 per year for the mayor. What is very interesting about the question that was posed to us is that it has not been reviewed or discussed for 39 years. So we were the first group of people that have actually gathered any evidence, made any conclusions, or done any research about whether this stipend for the mayor and council is appropriate for current time. So what we did was we discussed in great detail some of the issues surrounding raising or keeping the stipend as it is. The first thing that we addressed was the logical fact that it hasn't been changed in 39 years. Most people's cost of living has increased significantly during that amount of time, and salaries and stipends and things like that have all increased significantly over that time. But before we made any recommendation to you, we did some thorough research concerning the stipends paid to councils and mayors in several other communities around New Jersey. And we selected those corresponding communities with great diligence. We also analyzed some economic issues that I think I'll leave to Dan to discuss. But primarily, we wanted you to have some information upon which you can base your decision to either maintain the stipends as they are or to increase them in some fashion. This commission has made a bipartisan objective recommendation to advise you that our stipends in Metuchen are significantly lower than those of corresponding communities. But rather than just raise the stipend, we took into consideration many factors that we thought would be important to the council, both for and against changing the amount that's paid. First of all, we wanted to understand what the purpose of this stipend is. It is not a salary for serving. In essence, there would be no way to calculate the $1,200 that is paid to a council person as any kind of salary based upon the amount of time and effort put into serving the borough of Metuchen. The purpose is merely to show appreciation to the mayor and council for the volunteer efforts that they put in on a daily basis, and to cover some incidental costs that might occur due to serving the borough. For example, one of those costs is one that I incurred significantly when I served on this council, which is something such as babysitting. I served for 3 years, and during that time I had very young children. So in order to attend meetings, I was out of pocket some money for babysitting services. In addition, there are some significant costs for mayors and councils to participate in community activities. There are dues, there are tickets to events, there are contributions, there are costs for attending conferences, there's costs for reading materials, there's costs for memberships. Those are the kinds of things that we consider incidental costs of serving the borough, for which the stipend is to accommodate. However, just merely raising it, because that seems like the easy answer, wasn't sufficient for our group of rather analytical former council people. Some of the reasons against raising the stipend would be that it is the nature of the community in Metuchen to be that of a volunteer community. People serve an enormous amount of time for the benefit of other commissions in Metuchen. They serve on other commissions, other committees such as the Board of Education. They are elected to other positions, and there is a significant amount of volunteerism that makes Metuchen the borough that it is. Other people serve in those capacities and receive no stipend for those services. We differentiated the Borough Council from the Board of Elections, the Board of Education, because the Board of Education is an advisory board to the superintendent, where the council is actually the legislative branch of government here in Metuchen. So we analyzed other communities with similar populations And we took a look at the amount that was paid to their mayors and councils. In our report, I've attached a list of all of those other communities that we looked at to determine whether our stipend was in line with that of other communities. In fact, those that we looked at were not just communities in Middlesex County. We looked at communities around the entire state of New Jersey. And the way that we determined which communities we would compare ours to is by using the factor group that the Board of Education uses to compare school districts. And the factor group is based upon the socioeconomic level of other communities. So in the report that we presented to you, there's a long list of communities in our factor group, which is the group of I, as well as other groups that we looked at that were close, such as G, GH, and FG factor groups. And what we concluded was that Metuchen has significantly the lowest stipend in all of the communities that we looked at. And perhaps that is because it hasn't been raised at all in 39 years. So we went back to those communities and looked at the last time they raised their stipends. And for the majority of them that we were able to find a date of an ordinance, it was within the last 5 to 10 years. Another factor was purely economic, and I will turn that over to Dan to talk about how he analyzed for our committee the general analysis of the consumer price index.
Sure. After we had gotten the initial data, I shared with Sherry, I looked at the stipend in the first year that it was enacted, ran forward to current year. I ran it to the years that I served on the council. I went from the years I was on the council to where we are now, and if we really looked at where the CPI took it, it would take it to levels that actually were at the high end or exceeding the high end of all of the communities that we surveyed using the factor groups. So as we were, one of the tensions maybe the wrong word, we have all of this data, and we were trying to come to a conclusion of where should it lead us. And in the first set of analytics we did, we looked at Highland Park, and Highland Park was a relatively close factor group and in Middlesex County. And the jumps for both the council and the mayor's increase would be significant. And so that was the first thing that led me to share with Sherry, that if we look at CPI, what Highland Park has relative to Metuchen was really inside of at least an inflation-contained range. And then, we really looked around the rest of the state. We got relative ideas of where value was placed in terms of council and where value was placed in terms of mayor. And, ultimately, when we made the recommendation, given the visibility of the mayor's role in Metuchen, the amount of transportation that the mayor incurs relative to all other elected servants, we thought that deserved slightly more of an increase. Again, well within consumer price. I mean, we're talking about like a factor of like 50% of the consumer price index relative to the council positions. And so, again, we looked at, there were some communities that used a model that had direct reimbursement for expenses, and we really reviewed, it was actually, for what was a very narrow task, there were actually a lot of tangents that we were able to drive down, flesh out, and make sure that wasn't the right way to go. So there are some communities that they actually set a reimbursement rate for all of the travel, transportation, the what are the, like when we had, down in Atlantic City, when they have the conventions. Yeah, so the tuition for the convention. So we looked at those factors. We looked at, the fact that yourselves often have to grab a meal on the fly to get to a meeting, and so rather than have an inexpensive home-cooked meal, you're going to have to pay a premium to get a meal. We looked at the demands for making charitable contributions, and so ultimately, the recommendations we made, we think, fit nicely within the parameters of all of the communities that we studied. The options that some of those communities had as alternatives to just changing base stipends, they were well within consumer price index changes. And, just to add some color, I was thinking about this on the ride over. My last date of service to the council, it was 25 years ago, 2 weeks from now. And the fact that the stipend has not changed, I remember approaching Mayor O'Brien and telling him when he was mayor that I would be happy if he ever wanted to put together a bipartisan commission to study this, that I thought by that point it was overdue. And again, just to, I spent ages 22, 23, and 24 on the council. I had a busy life just getting my career started. And it cost, this is back in 1986, 87, and 88, it cost more money to be on the council than the stipend less taxes. And that's, 27, 26, and 25 years ago. So, I just want to add, and I think I speak for the entire committee because we were all there at different points in time relative to the committee service. Mine was the oldest period of time, and the fact that it had not changed in all that period of time is really startling when you think about it. And so we recognize that all of you, it's a labor of love, that you, in many cases, come out of pocket for your service, and we thought the time was more than appropriate, and that ultimately the recommendations we're making are more than appropriate given all the parameters that we looked at.
So after careful consideration and multiple suggestions, the committee unanimously recommended that the stipend be increased to an amount that is more in line with similarly situated communities. We also wanted to protect the interests of the Metuchen taxpayer so that there would be no concern with that stipend. Even though it is being raised, it does not trigger any eligibility for state pension contributions. We felt it important to maintain the difference between the mayor's stipend and the council stipend, given the fact that we have had very active mayors in the past. We have a very active mayor currently, and at some point in the future, we hope to attract similarly active mayors and council people as all of us eventually do move on and new people take our place. So with that being said, we have made 5 recommendations. And again, this was a unanimous bipartisan decision of this committee. We recommend that the council amend the current salary ordinance concerning the mayor and the council stipends. We recommend an increase to the stipend for the mayor to $4,800 per year. We recommend an increase to the stipend for the council to $2,400 per year. We recommend that the effective date of this ordinance be January 2014, and it be implemented in the next budget. We also recommend a review of the stipend every 10 years by a similarly appointed bipartisan committee of former council members, so that another 39 years doesn't go by without this issue being reviewed again. And we recognize that it's a sensitive issue, and we feel that the committee that was put together was extremely thoughtful, analytical, and hoping to serve the current council and mayor in the best interests of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the other members of your committee have anything to say?
That. And just want to reemphasize that it really is not a salary, it's a token of respect to each and every one of you for serving the members and citizens of Metuchen. So thank you for your service and all future leaders of our town.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the work that you did. I know it wasn't just one quick meeting, it was a number of meetings, it did a lot of research, and I appreciate the findings that you had. Now it'll be up to this body next year to react if they want to amend the salary range and ordinance next year, and then to work on it. But they will have the opportunity to do that based on your report. But I thank you very much.
Thanks.
Just on behalf of the council members, I want to thank you also for your work on this. Clearly, a lot of analysis, very analytical, as I heard coming through. So things that you looked at, which I never would even have thought about. So I appreciate you taking your time as volunteers to do this. And just, as the mayor said, the council will take this up for consideration in the new year. So just relative to what someone may see on the agenda later tonight, there is an ordinance amending and supplementing salary ranges. The mayor and council stipend is not included on that ordinance, so just to clarify everything, we're basically accepting the report of this committee, but taking no action relative to your recommendations. So, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like to commend this committee also. I've gotten reports from committees of 10 to 15 people, and it's 2 pages and doesn't say anything. And for a small group of people, the amount of time for such a detailed report of 5 pages is, you should be commended for it. A lot of time and effort was put into it, I can tell just by reading it and looking at it. That is a detailed piece of paper that this report is written, and it's, you should be commended.
Thank you.
Any other council people? Councilwoman?
Mayor, I have a question. Can we put this online? Because I can imagine people at home thinking increase. And since this is such a detailed report, and since they did put so much time and effort into it, you know, it would be good for the public to see it.
I agree. I think it's a very good suggestion. So, Katie, would you make sure that within the next day or two that it's up on the website?
Then I have one question.
Sure.
Under Highland Park, where the mayor and then council, the numbers kind of look jumbled together, so should it be like that, or is there a typo in there? So I don't want to put it on the web if it, you know...
Middle number is the council president.
Yes, some communities give the council president a higher stipend than the council members, and that is why Highland Park has 3 figures, one for the mayor, one for the president, and one for the council members. Similarly, Dunellen has 2 different amounts listed for the council, one for the president, one for the regular council members. We explored that issue and felt that it wasn't appropriate for our community to have a different salary for the council president.
Any other council member? Thank you again. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
I am now going to open the meeting to the public for any questions or comments. If you have any questions or comments, please just step forth. I know our mic is not there, but we should be able to hear you. Yeah. Any questions or comments from the public?
Regarding this issue or any
On anything?
You can use that,
Yeah, use the mic up here, Tom. Just state your name and address.
My name's Tom Rockefeller, 36 Linden Avenue. I was just wondering given the tragedy that happened on November 21st, I was just that resulted in the death of Mr. Liu, local resident who was struck in the crosswalk at Crystal and Grove. I was just wondering what actions that the council was going to do, or what thought you've given thus far.
Do you want me to take it? I could tell you that both the council president and I have already met with our police department, and we have a number of things that we're working on, and why don't you fill them in?
Sure, thanks. Yes, as the mayor said, we had a meeting within a couple of days of that incident with the police captain, police chief, the borough administrator, to discuss what other action can we take to address this problem, because clearly we feel like we've done a lot in pedestrian safety, but clearly it's not enough because these unfortunate incidents continue to happen. So we sort of talked about some immediate things, and then some things that need to be worked on over the longer term. And I had a follow-up call with the police chief this morning on some of these things. So just to fill you in, I think folks are aware that the borough acquired one of those variable message boards that you've seen in other towns. So we have that, and we're, in the next day or two, that's going to be placed at some of the major traffic routes and the high incident areas in town, which will have a message to the effect of, slow down, stop for pedestrians and crosswalks. And the idea is to keep it in a certain location for maybe 3 or 4 days, and then rotate it among, and it's up to the chief to figure this out, but I would think maybe 5 or 6 locations where that would be placed. And with any of these steps, I think we all recognize that there's not one silver bullet. There's not one thing we can do that's going to solve these issues. But one of the things that we talked about in our meeting was, I believe that if we, through multiple coordinated efforts, we can start to get the message across that we're serious about this, that people need to slow down, they need to look for pedestrians and crosswalks. Our pedestrians need to know that they can't step out. They need to, make eye contact and make sure that the drivers see them. So there's a lot of things that we need to do. So the use of the variable message board, I think, will start in a big way to get, sort of get that message across. The chief is also going to schedule some pedestrian safety talks or workshops, I guess, with the senior center and at the schools. The police have done a lot of analysis of these incidents, and I think, don't quote me, but I think if there's been 6 people hit, 5 of them have been senior citizens, over the age of 70. So clearly, I think him spending time with seniors to educate them and do what we can to keep them safer is important. Obviously, in the schools, getting that message out, and also, I think, just think about now, we need to get school parents involved in this to understand what can be done, what they need to do to be safer on their trips to and from school. They're also working with the county. There's been a few outstanding requests or issues that they're going to put more pressure on, and we advise them to turn to the mayor, to myself, others people, if we need to go over to the freeholders and through increased communication to sort of get some of these things going. We have a pedestrian safety, and we have a pedestrian crossing at New Durham and Hampton. So the crossing is there, but there are not the signs on New Durham that says pedestrian safety, pedestrian crossing ahead. That's outstanding. That needs to get done. One of the issues that Chief has been pushing for a while is at the crosswalk near the Greenway on New Durham. It's a yellow flash. He wants it to be turned to red, which I think is a great idea, because people, when you see red, you're more prone to stop as opposed to yellow. Some folks are familiar with on 27 in Metro Park, there's a similar, it's a red light. So I think we need to get that done at that Greenway crossing, and think about it as we do additional lighted crosswalks and the pedestrian crosswalks. We also talked about trying to step up enforcement activities from the police, getting, whether it's ticketing speeders, being visible in crosswalks, just trying to redeploy resources to step up the enforcement part of pedestrian safety. So the chief and the captain are going to look into that. Obviously, they have our police have to do a lot of things, so this is obviously a priority, but it's not something he can just, snap his fingers and that it can happen, but he's going to be working on that too. So from a long-term perspective, the mayor and borough administrator and I talked about, we'd like to put more lighted crosswalks. We know we need more of those. That's going to take engineering, budget money. So as we look to develop the budget for the coming year, and I think for subsequent years, we need to look to see where we can replace the non-working lighted crosswalks, where we can budget to put new crosswalks, whether they're as detailed or as elaborate as the one at the train station, but definitely to have these crosswalks lighted and make it more visible to drivers that you're approaching a crosswalk. So those are some of the things that we talked about. We're meeting, I think, Mayor, next Friday with follow-up
Correct.
with the chief and the captain. So it's, on the front burner. Oh, one more thing, sorry. We talked about expanding the pedestrian flag program. We have 2 locations now. And Mayor, I talked with the chief again this morning about this, and I think you had said the other day too. We're looking to maybe add 3 more shortly, because again, that's not a silver bullet either, but my belief has been we only have 2. I don't think it has the scale, and there's not enough scale. People don't encounter it in enough places for that message to get across. So I think we want to circle back to the Traffic and Transportation Committee, because I think they had identified maybe 5 locations earlier this year where they wanted to add these. I think maybe we want to relook that, and so I would look to them to maybe give us a recommendation on maybe 3 more places that we can do that.
One of the other things that we talked about was making sure that the crosswalks are better marked, painted, that the signs, as the council president said, that the lights were changed from the yellow to the red wherever we had the blinking, and stepped up education and stepped up enforcement. I happened to be sitting in the downtown when I was talking to the council president and watched 20 people jaywalk in a 10-minute time. And as you know, we were fortunate nobody got hit, but people cutting in and out between cars is going to increase our potential for having that happen. I think that part of this, a lot of this, is with the inattentiveness of drivers and the inattentiveness of pedestrians. I think one of the key things is to get eye contact, and that's not foolproof. Because the other day, I had eye contact, but the guy still tried to almost hit me when I was in the crosswalk downtown, making a left-hand turn. And I also think that getting these programs with senior citizens and with our schools, the more we do, the more we reach out for education, and the more we reach out with the county and try to, replace some of the lit crosswalks that are not working. We have 2 that are not working right now, and look at other methods. There's going to be, as the council president said, no magic bullet that's going to do it. And the irony here, I also think that part of our problem this year is, and I know with the trucks hitting Main Street, with the construction that's going on Lake and Middlesex in that area, I think that creates some more issues for us. But I think that the stepped-up enforcement is another issue that we have to really look at. And maybe it's not a ticket at first. Maybe it's a warning for somebody jaywalking. It's not that far a walk from anywhere in our Main Street to one of the crosswalks. But, I mean, like I said, 10 minutes, I counted 20 people zipping in and out. In fact, one guy went back and forth 3 times. It was almost like, why even have a crosswalk? But people have to be really cognizant of what they're doing. Before they hit the button and step out, they've got to look, all right? And they've got to be aware of what's happening with, in wherever they're crossing. So I think there are a number of things we can do. Is it going to totally wipe out the problem? I don't think so. But I think it's some things that we're looking at are good steps to go for the future.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yeah.
One thing struck me recently, there's an article in the Ledger, Star Ledger, that Middlesex County had the highest rate of pedestrians being killed by vehicles. And so much of what we do in Metuchen about educating hits residents of Metuchen, and well, some residents still haven't learned. Many of us have. Trying to figure out if there's a way to work with the county, whether it's through the prosecutor's office, Keep Middlesex Moving, to start doing outreach to groups and community churches and throughout the county, but, you know, from our perspective, throughout the towns surrounding us, to do pedestrian safety programs and to do driver education programs, so that people, when they come into Metuchen, they understand, I'm not going to have a hard time unless I do something wrong, but if I do something wrong, they're going to stop me. And I think we don't want to become the town people avoid altogether, but I think we do want to become the town that takes it seriously, which we do, but we have to step it up. And we're not going to address the issue if we just deal with Metuchen. We need to deal with, so much is transient. We need to deal with all the communities around us. And I don't know how you do that, perhaps a prosecutor's office or Keep Middlesex Moving or another group like that that's more regional has an approach. But it would seem logical to reach out to churches, temples, community organizations, and try to develop a program that reminds people that, you know, this is all about protecting themselves as well as their neighbors. So if we can kind of, and I spoke to the council president about that, and I know you've talked about it, but I think it's something we have to keep on the front burner. We can educate everybody in Metuchen about the flags, but I watch Route 27 constantly, and most of the people there in the morning and afternoon during rush hour are not from town. So we do need to make them more aware of what those flags are about. And maybe a larger program, a regional program, working with other police departments would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public that have a question or comment?
Sean Massey, Highland Ave. I'm really encouraged by what I heard from the mayor, from the council president, from Councilman Camerano. We touched on a number of fronts with respect to engineering, enforcement, education. You know, I would just ask, you know, as we attack this you know, horrible issue that we're confronting, because as we've talked about, there is no one silver bullet, that we perhaps develop a comprehensive plan. It can be as simple as a 1- or 2-page document that speaks to what we're doing with respect to education, what we're doing with respect to enforcement, what we're doing with respect to engineering, and then keep tabs on how we're doing, collect data regularly, measure progress against a plan that's adopted and blessed by the council, the community, and just see how we're doing over time. You know, I think just in the few minutes we've been talking about it, we heard a couple engineering solutions, some short-term, you know, whether it's flags or flashing lights that are red versus yellow, as opposed to other longer-term solutions that are going to be more capital-intensive. So why not capture that in a document so everyone is clear? And I think, you know, the Metuchen residents, they're a pretty understanding bunch, and we know that the funding environment is difficult, but I think there needs to be reassurance that, you know, some of these crosswalks that are in bad shape infrastructure-wise, that we're aware of that and we're taking steps to remedy it. But as it was said, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's captured in a document. You know, it could be part of our circulation plan, however we want to do it, but it's out there, it's acknowledged by our governing body, and that we're taking steps to chase down the necessary resources, whether it's from the county, the state, or from within our own pocketbook. And frankly, I think as someone who's worked in state government, when you have a document like that and you bring it to other authorities, state DOT, county DOT, and you say, hey, look, we've got a problem, but we've got a plan. And this is what it is, short-term, long-term. This is what it is in terms of stuff that's expensive and stuff that's not so expensive. Help us accomplish this plan. I think government officials at all levels will really respond to that. Do you think that's something that we can push for and adopt in, you know, the next, say, 60 days or so we can really capture all these bullets that we're talking about and have them down on the page?
I think we could work with our engineer and our planner to develop something, and with our borough administrator.
Okay.
I won't guarantee 60 days because, you know, you're into the holiday time, but I think it can be done.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I would just say that, you know, it's an urgent matter. I think there's a real concern in the community, and, you know, this is not hyperbole. This is reality. And I think the sooner that we have something like that out there, so that people know that these are the steps that we're taking, you know, across the spectrum here, whether it's engineering, education, enforcement, I think that will provide some measure of comfort that, we're doing what needs to be done.
I think I'm sorry, I like the idea of, it would almost, from a capital perspective, and I guess engineering, to know whether it's 3 or 5 years down the road, what we want to accomplish, because, I think there's traffic calming initiatives that I think are in the current circulation plan, but I think we haven't taken action on those because of the cost. But so if we can step back, and I don't think we can do it in 60 days, but if we can step back and say, we want to accomplish the following, and it may take 3 or 5 years.
Sure.
That gives us like our roadmap that we can work towards, and whether it's identifying money in our budget or pursuing grants with the county or state, I think that's a good idea that I think we, as the mayor said, we can talk with our engineer and planner to see how we can pull those things together, and because I think it's more than just doing a 1 month, a 1 year plan. I think it's
Oh, absolutely.
multi-year
And
thing.
some of the stuff, some of the items or initiative that are on this initial document, reasonable people will say, well, that's pie in the sky. You could pick some capital upgrade, we're like, well, there's no money for that. But you still have to capture it, because if you're saying, look, as a governing body, this is a step that we think is appropriate to take to make sure we've got a safe walking environment or cycling environment, whatever it is, you have it down on the page, and then it's just part of your long-term plan. And as you work toward knocking off phases and individual projects, all of a sudden you're building up to a place where, okay, maybe something that was pie in the sky in 2013 is more, more doable, 5 years from now, or whatever the timetable might be. But I do know other parties that would look to partner with us, whether at the state or county level. I think they will want to see that we do have a plan for both the short term and the long term.
Sean, are you aware of either nonprofits or think tanks or governments or other entities that have worked on these plans, or that have generated concepts we could look at? Or
Sure. I think certainly Keep Middlesex Moving is a great starting point. And the really wonderful thing is a lot of the initiatives themselves that we're talking about we know them. We just talked about flashing lights at a certain intersection. I'm sure everyone in this room can reel off, 5 or 6 crosswalks that you're saying, oh, we really need to do something there. We should be putting pedestrian flags at these 3 additional spots, or whatever it is. It's essentially, it's an Excel, you can use Excel and you just put tabs across the way, say these are the enforcement ones, these are the education ones, these are your engineering ones. You identify what they are, you identify what the costs are. So the cost for the PED flags, $40, right? Something like that. So you identify the costs across the board, schedule to implement. PED flags go out in the next couple weeks, whatever it is. We can get those out as quickly as we want, but some of the items would be obviously longer term and would require funding from outside sources. I'd certainly be happy to help put something like that together, or I can provide you stuff that's been done elsewhere in other states. Yeah, that's no trouble
I'd
at all.
appreciate that.
And also, I would like to look into the possibility of putting things on social media where people go on to and they can get like a little message about traffic safety, pedestrian safety, slowing down. And if there's any kind of public service announcements that we could run on the PEG stations in the county, see if there's anything that's already produced, and find something that would be appropriate, and maybe put them on the PEG stations in between our different shows that go on, whether it's a council meeting or a parade or whatever. In between, maybe put 30 seconds of some kind of educational thing, and if we do it countywide, everyone will be getting the same message.
And just to continue on the data side, I think one of the important things, that I've found working in transportation is that you measure your progress against plan, and you don't always hit your marks. I can assure you that we didn't always hit our marks on a lot of the projects I was working on, but often enough we did, and there has to be accountability to whatever it is that we set forth in in any kind of document that comes together. So I think it's important on, say, the enforcement side that we're keeping tabs on the number of tickets or summons that are issued for some of the violations that we know, contribute to a dangerous walking environment out there, whether it's crosswalk violations or failure to yield or whatever it is. Is that data that's currently collected and can be shared with the public?
Yeah, I believe it's all public. We get it on a regular basis.
Right.
That's easy to do.
Okay.
I believe it's all public.
You mean the police reports?
Sure, the types of violations
Yeah.
and all that.
So it's all...
It's done on a month, it's collated monthly and then yearly.
And we do it
And
in
it's
annual
up on the
report.
police website, is it, or where is
I
it
don't
made
know if it is
available?
or not.
I don't know if it's on the
Yeah,
website.
I'll look into that to see where
Okay.
it's posted.
And we do have it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Well, that'll make things easier. And then finally, just to a point that was raised on jaywalking, jaywalking, it's interesting. It was actually a term that was invented by the automobile industry. It's a derogatory term made back in the 20s to suggest, well, if you're crossing the street and getting in the way of automobiles, well, you're a blank and jaywalker. And so it was actually a marketing term that was thought of back in the 20s and 30s because the automobile industry didn't want folks slowing down, these big hunks of tin that were coming through the various main streets across America. And I would just say, given the limited resources that we have, and I think a number of folks have spoken to the fact that we don't have a lot of dollars, hours available for police to do the fine work they do are obviously finite, and only so many things can be done in a given day or 8-hour shift. I would think long and hard before I started ticketing folks that were in our downtown, walking, spending dollars at our stores, supporting our local economy, before I start issuing them tickets against folks that are whizzing through crosswalks, driving too fast, not yielding to folks. So I would just add that as a commentary on jaywalking.
I didn't say give a ticket, I said first give a warning.
I w-
But I think both of them create an issue which you're talking about safety. And I've had complaints from the senior citizens. I'm driving downtown, I'm nervous because I got people coming out between cars. That's also a safety factor.
It's an allocation of resources, and I would just say, it's just my comment, I would first look to the motorists, look to the folks that are in the 2,000 pounds of tin.
I think obviously that's going to be the focus.
Sure.
Generally, when the police do crosswalk enforcement for motor vehicles, those are issues they try to deal with as well, because it's all happening right within the
Right,
same.
of course, it's right there.
So I'm not aware of anybody getting a summons for jaywalking. I am aware of people being spoken to and said, hey, listen,
Right.
go to the
Be
crosswalk.
smart, right.
Because it does become, particularly if you're approaching a crosswalk and you're focused on the lighted crosswalk.
Sure.
Just take the one at Penn. Because for me, all of a sudden somebody darts, you're focused on the crosswalk because you know it's there. All of a sudden somebody darts across the street. There is an issue there. Do I think we need to be ticketed? No. But it is something that they routinely will address if they're out doing crosswalk enforcement for vehicles. Because when they do that, they're not in their cars for the most part. The easiest way to see that is to be on foot.
Right.
So that's how they deal with it.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Mayor, to keep this moving, can we give Mr. Massey a date by which we can get this spreadsheet done by? Because I really don't want to, or just a ballpark.
It's a little hard to give them a particular date when we haven't talked to the people we're going to
Engineer.
talk to, the engineer or the planner.
Okay.
And you also have the holiday season coming up. I don't know
Right.
what their availability is.
Could we say, perhaps say early February? That gives us...
I think we could work as that a goal, but I'm not going to give you, okay, February 1st, we're going to have this, and it's going to be up and working.
But it won't be June of 2014.
I would hope not.
Okay, great.
Thanks again.
Anyone else from the public?
Come on up and sit down, sure.
Thanks. I'm Karen Alexander. I live on Lawrence Street, and in talking about this tragedy that happened last week, we've been talking a lot about engineering and enforcement and a little bit about education. And I think, just to round out the conversation, I want to spend a moment talking about that education piece, because I think in addition to focusing on the senior center and conversations with the police department, thinking really about where there's natural concentrations of older adults who are in Metuchen beyond the senior center, potentially looking at places like the YMCA, looking at houses of worship in particular that have aging congregations, and really being strategic, thinking about the senior citizen building that's down by the ball fields, and really focusing education efforts and targeting them in places where older adults already are. It may even be the diner. I mean, to really think in a broad sense and bringing that education to them rather than expecting them to come to the senior center. A lot of older adults living in a community like Metuchen aren't going to go to the senior center, but you'll see them at the public library routinely, for example. So in thinking about that piece, and then as an extension, thinking about the engineering and the enforcement pieces, think about where the older adults are. And those are probably, I mean, just given our track record in terms of who's been hit, those are probably the intersections that go to and from those locations that you may want to encourage the borough planner and engineer to really think about and look at, because we know that that's where there's a known risk. The other thing in terms of a county-wide effort, you know, to get to lots of places in Middlesex County, you're driving through Metuchen. And so this statistic that was recently in the paper, in terms of us having, you know, the worst track record in the state, I think opens up an opportunity to have a conversation on a county-wide basis, perhaps with the public library systems, again, as a point of education across Middlesex County, certainly with the Department for the Aging in Middlesex County. Again, natural partners that would share that agenda and potentially help amplify an education effort or an outreach effort. And then it's not just on our shoulders and just on the budget of Metuchen, but it becomes more of a county-wide strategy. The last thing that I would just mention is there are some existing programs that are out there. New York City, for a number of years, has had a Safe Streets for Seniors program, and we may be able to borrow some of the strategies that they've used. They have what's called age-friendly districts that specifically focus on making neighborhoods more walkable for older adults who live in particular parts of New York City where there's high concentrations of older adults. So I wanted to throw those things into the mix because you can certainly build and you can certainly enforce, but what we also have to change is the behavior of the people who are walking on the streets. And particularly when it comes, we know this with kids, you know, we have walking school buses with groups of kids. Same story with older adults. If we can get folks to walk in numbers, they will be more visible. So even walking with a friend, making sure you have the reflective gear on, but if there's 2 or 3 people coming down the street, that's much harder to miss if you're a pedestrian. So just some thoughts coming out of sort of aging in place kind of work that I think might be helpful in strategizing on this front. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else from the public that has a question or comment? Hearing none, I'm going to close that section of the meeting. We now have a number of ordinances that we have to re-adopt because of a typo error in the newspapers.
Thank you, Mayor. Katie, would you, first we're going to do ordinance number 2013-7. Would you present an affidavit of publication?
Said ordinance has been published one time in the Home News Tribune according to law on November 16, 2013.
I move that affidavit be received and filed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Katie, would you read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2013-7, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the Borough of Metuchen, D1 zone.
I'm now going to open the meeting for public comments on that ordinance and that ordinance only. Anyone that has a question or comment, please step forth. Hearing none, I'm going to close that section of the meeting.
I move that the ordinance be passed on second reading and published according to law.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Councilman Camerano?
Yes.
Councilman Grazel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Council President Muldoon?
Yes.
Okay.
Next
one.
we have ordinance number 2013-9. Katie, would you present affidavit of publication?
Said ordinance has been published one time in the Home News Tribune according to law on November 14, 2013.
I move that affidavit be received and filed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Katie, would you read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2013-9, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the Borough of Metuchen, ordinance number 2013, bond ordinance appropriating $854,064 and authorizing $552,550 bonds or notes of the borough for various improvements and purposes authorized to be undertaken by the Borough of Metuchen, the County of Middlesex, New Jersey.
I'm going to hold a public hearing on this ordinance and this ordinance only. For any questions or comments, please step forth. Hearing none, I'm going to close that section of the meeting.
I move that the ordinance be passed on second reading and published according to law.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a roll call vote.
Councilman Camerano?
Yes.
Councilman Grayzel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Insaro?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Council President Muldoon?
Yes. Next was ordinance 2013-10. Katie, would you present an affidavit of publication?
Said ordinance has been published one time in the Home News Tribune according to law on November 14, 2013.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. You have to move it first.
I move, yeah.
Yep, I'm good.
I move that affidavit be received and filed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Katie, would you read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2013-10, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 2007-3 to include an additional purpose.
Okay, I'm going to open to the public for questions or comments on this ordinance and this ordinance only. Hearing no questions or comments, I'm going to close that section of the meeting.
I move that ordinance be passed on second reading and published according to law.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Councilman Camerano?
Yes.
Councilman Grayzel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Insaro?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Council President Muldoon?
Yes. And the final one is ordinance 2013-11. Katie, would you present an affidavit of publication?
Said ordinance has been published one time in the Home News Tribune according to law on November 14, 2013.
I move that the affidavit be received and filed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Katie, would you read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2013-11, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance number 2008-7 to include an additional purpose.
I'm going to open it to the public for any questions or comments on this ordinance and this ordinance only. Hearing no questions or comments, I'm going to close that section of the meeting.
I move that ordinance be passed on second reading and published according to law.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Camerano?
Yes.
Councilman Grayzel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Insaro?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Council President Muldoon?
Yes. Next, I move that communications consent agenda items A through E be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now at that point where we have reports of the council. Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a brief update from the Parking Authority relative to the Pearl Street project. The selected developer, Woodmont Properties, has been in discussions with the American Legion regarding acquisition of their portion of the parking lot and their building. They're going to be relocating them to a new building that will be built on Parking Authority property near Warnock Place. So I think they hope to have those negotiations finalized hopefully this month, and that will enable the developer to move forward with site plans and those kind of things. So I think people have been stopping me and asking what's going on with Pearl Street, so that finalizing the arrangement with the American Legion is what's been worked on now. So hopefully in January I'll be able to give you a further update. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Wallace?
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I'd like to mention the auxiliary police first for the great job they've done at several events during the month of November and the Christmas or holiday parade this past weekend. I'm sure you all saw them out there in force. I think every single one of them that's active was out there at a different place and doing different things. Traffic and Transportation doesn't meet till next Wednesday, and I've been listening to everything here tonight, and I will make sure all these things are discussed. The Recreation Commission, again, should be commended for running the holiday parade and having that hot chocolate waiting at the end by the Senior Citizen Building before Santa arrived, and it tasted good when I had my cup, I know that. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Councilman, just as a point, we have an appointment tonight, but we don't have the appointment for the Middlesex County Traffic and Transportation Committee. We need somebody from Traffic and Transportation to serve on that committee. So if you could remind them at the next meeting to have an appointment.
Yes, I was going to talk to you. I know one of the members on there talks to you regularly right after the meeting. We also have some open slots on the Traffic and Transportation.
Okay.
We are going to have to fill at the first of the year.
Okay.
Jim, did you say they're meeting next week?
Next Wednesday.
All right, at that meeting, could you, it'd be great if we could get from them their recommendation for the additional flag
Yes.
locations? I know
They've talked about it. They do have some other
they might want to adjust
places
that
they
a
want
little
to do
bit.
that, yeah.
All
I'm
right.
sure they'll be more than happy to have 3, 4, 5 intersections added and ready for you the next day,
That's not this week, it's next week.
next Wednesday,
Okay,
not tomorrow.
Okay.
all right,
Or
thank
this
you.
Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 11th.
And can I ask you a question, Councilman? While we're on the subject of the flags, can you ask them to look into the potential of utilizing flag stands as opposed to buckets? I don't know what the cost is, if they could find that out. Flag stands, which are used in a lot of places, have 7 or 8 flags tucked in. They're almost like trees, metal trees. And one thing it does is it alerts people, even when there's nobody at the intersection, that there's, you see 5 or 6 orange flags, it draws your attention. I don't know if it's feasible, but if you could bring that up to them.
Yeah, I'm
It
sure.
may be better than the flags rolled up in a bucket, because you really can't see them.
You're
And
right.
it may be
They just
another
stick out a
way.
little bit on the top.
Yeah,
Some
it
people
just may
put
be
it the other
another
You
way.
only see a stick.
Yep,
You're exactly right.
it may be another way to draw attention to the crosswalk.
But I have seen, I went back to work today, but I had plenty of time in between the last few months, and I did see the one at Main and High being used on a regular basis lately by senior citizens and by children. And if we do repair our blinking light problems, we can actually move that particular red flag area to another area.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Rasmussen?
Okay, I have a short report today. The Youth Services Board will be having their town talks tomorrow at Metuchen High School. The doors will open at 6 o'clock, and the program will actually begin at 7. And just to give people that are not sure what town talks is, it's a panel of professionals who will work with substance abuse issues and provide an opportunity for parents and youths to learn important information and to speak openly about their concerns in a supportive environment. The evening will focus on youth issues and ways for teens to keep safe in substance abuse environments, including an understanding of the 9/11 Good Samaritan Law, its implications concerning underage drinking and illegal drug use here in New Jersey, as well as away at college. And there will also be an introduction to the Alliance's Safe Homes Project. So please join us tomorrow. It's free, and you'll get some great information. And Development Commission will meet Wednesday, and I have nothing for shade tree or environmental. And I want to remind people to shop in our stores first when looking for holiday gifts, and to eat in our restaurants when you are too busy from holiday shopping to cook. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Insero?
Thank you, Mayor. The Chamber of Commerce sponsored the 60th Annual Winter Festival Parade yesterday. It was great weather and a great turnout, and I think everyone had a fabulous time. I'm not sure what the replay schedule is on METV, but you can check online if you want to see yourself or see your friends and neighbors on the sidelines watching everything. Next up is the tree lighting Friday night at the Old Franklin Schoolhouse at 7 p.m. On the December 10th, they're having their annual holiday dinner. This is actually a new event and an old event combined into one. Instead of doing their March installation dinner of new officers, they're combining their holiday luncheon in December and their March installation dinner with a new event at Lucas at 5:30 next Tuesday. So if you're interested in attending, please RSVP to the Chamber office tomorrow. And let's see, at that event on Tuesday, they're honoring Jason Conway, Rydell Volkswagen, and Metuchen Seniors, Inc. Metuchen Seniors, Inc. is the nonprofit fundraising arm of the Metuchen Seniors Commission, and they're being honored as Nonprofit of the Year, which brings me to my Metuchen Seniors report. The Metuchen Seniors is having 2 events next week. They're having 2 holiday events next week. The Metuchen Seniors Commission is having their dinner on the 11th, and Metuchen Seniors, Inc. is having their luncheon on Friday, the 13th. And the Board of Health, we have a meeting Wednesday, this coming Wednesday at 7:30 for a second reading to change the heat ordinance regarding rental properties. And as a side note, to follow up on Councilwoman Mussin's note to reminding everyone to shop locally, the Borough Improvement League, which is also a chamber member, if you haven't seen this yet, it's the Hometown Holiday Weekend Guide to all the events that kick off in Metuchen. It started last weekend, but it also really gets going this weekend with the tree lighting, the house tour. Full disclosure, I'm a member of the BIL, also a family member of the chamber. So check out this guide. It's online for all the events happening in Metuchen.
And it's on the borough website, you can download that.
Yes, it's on the borough website, boroughimprovement.org.
Okay, what type of changes are they anticipating to this rent heat?
It's changing it to an actual temperature setting. I don't have it in front of me, instead of by months. Mr. Murphy, do you have it in front of you, by any chance, the heat ordinance?
No, I don't. No, I don't have a copy.
We discussed it earlier in the year.
The,
Yeah, the heat ordinance.
Essentially, what it does is it regulates
By
certain
temperature.
certain times of the year that a landlord's required to have heat, as well as it regulates the temperature that's required.
but isn't that assigned by state statute? Or?
Yes, yes. And the state statute also requires the Board of Health to pass the ordinance. That's why the Board of Health passed the ordinance.
Ours was not in conformance with the rest of the county.
No,
Ours
it was
out of
not.
line.
With the state?
Right, ours was just out of line with everyone.
Yeah, it was, I believe it was outdated.
Yeah, it was outdated.
Okay.
And then we coordinated preparation of the ordinance, and then it was referred to the Board of Health.
Right.
Okay, all right,
Our health inspector recommended it.
okay. Anything else?
That concludes my report.
Okay, Councilman Grayzel?
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman Camerano, you're hitting cleanup.
Your Honor, as you know, because you joined me this morning at the library welcoming the new library director on her first day of work, members of the board and staff had a little gathering, coffee and bagels and stuff. So we do have a new director, and I'm happy to report she will be in on January 16th at our meeting, so we can introduce her and give her an opportunity to tell her what she sees as her priorities with the library. I don't remember her last name, I do apologize for that. But it's Susanna, and she comes to us from the South Brunswick Children's Library, where she was the director of the Children's Library. And it's very exciting. I mean, it's a good opportunity to put forward, and as you know, we had a good discussion this morning about the direction of the library, where we want to take it, and looking for other opportunities for programming, funding, and stuff, all different avenues, which I think we will all benefit from in the community. So look forward to that. Now that you've embarrassed me. I was running late, otherwise I would have my notes. I also would, the pool commission will meet the library board will meet next week. The pool commission will meet next week as well. And the first aid squad, I was not able to attend their meeting because I was at the League of Municipalities, but they are wrapping up the year, and they anxiously await the borough's contribution, which usually comes about this time. So I have no further report.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, do you have any report?
No, Mayor, I have no report this time.
I have no report.
Okay, my report's going to be very short because everybody talked about some of the things that I was going to talk about. I think the parade was great. I want to compliment all of our groups that volunteered, EMS, fire, police, auxiliary police, and our DPW for doing a great job in cleaning up. There was a new tradition that was started, or an old tradition that was brought back, depends on how you look at it. There was an alumni breakfast at the high school on Thanksgiving Day prior to the Highland Park game, which was a game that had been suspended for over 10 years with the state. So now the state is allowing for football games on Thanksgiving. Metuchen's crowd was very, very well attended. The Highland Park crowd was not, there wasn't a lot of people. And I understand Metuchen won handily. I was there up till halftime. But the more important thing was the alumni breakfast beforehand, which was quite well attended, and we want to see that grow for future years. The holiday lighting, the tree lighting is at 7 p.m. on Friday. And I had talked to our engineer, and he is working and has sent a letter to the county engineer, the acting county engineer, about the Main Street railroad bridge crossing, since it's been hit 16 times now. And he has investigated that there are potential signage things and actually signs that work with lasers and everything to help protect us and protect the bridge. And so he's trying to work out, since that is a county road, to work out with them and make some recommendations and work with the county at getting these installed. A similar one is up at Parsonage Road, going down to the railroad, to the trestle, and he knows of a couple others, and that it would be a great thing to help us and eliminate or reduce the number of hits on our Main Street trestle. So Tom Harris has already sent that letter. I'll share this with you, Councilman, to go with the traffic and transportation. I talked to Jay Galeota about it.
Mayor, I have a question, just a thought came out as you were talking about that issue. Is there a freeholder who kind of has responsibility for these transportation, traffic type? I'm not really sure how what their liaisons are and all that, but
I think there's one that's in charge of roads.
Okay.
But I don't think they're specifically with bridges and stuff. I think it goes to their engineering department.
Okay. Because my thought was maybe we could get a meeting with, if it is a freeholder, maybe there's two, like just, because we have so many issues, it sounds like, that are related to traffic, roads, bridges, pedestrian safety. If we could get some sort of direct dialogue with...
I'll find out if there is,
Right,
but in the past, I think we've only dealt with engineer and road issues.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've dealt with dealt with bridges.
Because maybe that could just give, it's not so much, the bridge thing made me think about it, but it's really a lot of the things we talked about tonight. If we could just maybe get some air cover by having a freeholder more aware of our issues and how serious they are, so maybe we could be happy to do that with you, but I'm not really sure who that might be.
Well, I think we'd reach out to almost any, either the freeholder director or the freeholder from Edison, because he's very familiar with the town. You know, I know that Councilman didn't mention much, but we met with the dog park committee, and we're looking potentially at a spot in Roosevelt Park, but I have a meeting that I'm setting up with the mayor from Edison to talk about that, and also the interchange on Route 27 and 287. And we're, moving forward, and then we'll be talking with the freeholder board or freeholders to garner their support for that issue.
Or maybe once we get the plan, we put sort of our overall plan in place, maybe that's a good time to engage. I just think we need to get them more aware and supportive.
I think our engineer would be able to give us better guidance on that.
Yeah, okay. So
Since he's worked with the towns in the area and knows the setup with the county, I think he would be the one to give us that information. Okay? All righty.
Hey, I've gone to Parsonage Road 4 times, spent a half hour there, not one truck tried to go down there, so I didn't get to see that thing operate.
Yeah. Well, in talking to Mr. Harrods, he said that there are some that are triggered by lasers, and then flashing lights go off before they get to the thing. So we would have to put it further up the...
I've never seen it work, and I've given it a real all-out try.
when I've talked to both the council president of Edison and the present mayor, they tell me that the thing is working quite well, and it's reduced their problem. It's not eliminated it, but it's reduced it. And I think if we could look at doing something like that that reduces our problem, we're never going to eliminate the whole thing. But I also think that part of our problem this year, again, we're almost going to be double. I mean, we have 2 more, we're double of what we did last year in strikes. I think part of that, too, is when you come down Amboy Avenue, the signage there says construction ahead, and I think they missed the sign for the 11-2 height turning right. And I think some of the truck drivers who are not in the area look at it and say, oh, let me get away from this construction, and they turn right, and they miss the 11-2, they get going at 30 miles or 35 miles an hour, and then they smack the bridge.
They backed a couple out of there today, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
They did the head.
So I think that's a combination. I have Tom Harris, our engineer, looking at both the signage and looking at the possibility of getting one of some type of other device, let's say, that will help us out. Okay?
Mayor?
Yeah.
I was wondering if I could ask either you or Bill to update us on the pump house project.
Sure. Right now, for some weeks now, the contractor has been given the notice to proceed. He's in the process of procuring the equipment for installation. That's not something that you can purchase off the shelf. They have to be fabricated.
How long do they think the project will take from the time it starts until the time it's completed? Any idea?
Once the equipment is obtained, it shouldn't be more than a week or 2.
Thank you.
You're talking about the sewer pumping station.
Right.
Pump station.
The pump station.
Pump
over by
station,
on Jersey Ave.
Okay.
Yeah. Just for the public to know, clarify what we're talking about. Okay, I'm done with my report.
Okay. I move that new business consent agenda items A through J be approved.
I actually had a question on one item. Does it need to be pulled, or can I just ask my question?
No, ask the question. Which item?
The Public Health Services Contract 2013-222. It has to do with some of the things we were talking about tonight. I guess this is a question for the Borough Administrator. What specialized grant services does the county provide? When I read through the contract, it says the county provides us with specialized grant services.
Okay, I'm not aware of any.
Just in my mind, it makes me think that we could ask them for help in writing a grant, but I have no idea what that means.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know, I don't believe the
Okay.
borough has ever taken advantage of that. It's
Okay.
a standard line that's been in the contract for, I don't know, 20, 30 years.
Okay.
But you're correct, I mean, there may be something there that we could take advantage of.
The second point has to do with some of the things we talked about tonight, which is health education. Given one of Councilman Camerano's suggestions about reaching out to surrounding communities, and also the suggestions of an audience member about educating surrounding communities about traffic issues, maybe that's an area where we could just utilize this contract more effectively, other than just restaurant inspections. It's just a thought. That's
Well, we
my
can
only
look
comment about
into
it.
it.
That's it.
Okay, I have a motion. Did I get a second?
Second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all of those resolutions have passed.
Mayor, I move that the bill resolution, the amount of $3,231,237.31 be moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we do not have an appointment in number 15. Now we have introduction of 2 ordinances.
Okay. First one is ordinance 2013-15. Katie, would you, sorry, first reading. I move that ordinance number 2013-15 be introduced and taken up on first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
You have to, you have to ask her to read the,
No.
Now it's a vote.
Vote.
oh, sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Katie, would you read the ordinance by title only?
Ordinance number 2013-15, an ordinance amending and supplementing ordinance number 92-25, establishing salary ranges.
I motion that the ordinance be passed on first reading, published according to law, and the public hearing set down for
December 16th.
For December 16th.
December 6th, yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Councilman Camerano.
Yes.
Councilman Grazel.
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Yes.
Councilman Wallace.
Yes.
Council President Muldoon.
Yes. I move that ordinance number 2013-16 be introduced and taken up on first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Katie, would you read the ordinance by title only?
Ordinance number 2013-16, an ordinance to amend the code of the Borough of Metuchen, various chapters to amend certain application, license, and permit fees.
I move that ordinance be passed on first reading, published according to law, and public hearing set down for December 16th.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Councilman Camerano.
Yes.
Councilman Grazel.
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Yes.
Councilman Wallace.
Yes.
Council President Muldoon.
Yes.
I'm going to open it to the public for any questions or comments. Hearing none, close that section of the meeting.
I move for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.